it like that with your arms, or do you want to prop
I got it.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for being here for the very first reading of Seeing Red, which comes out today through Propertious Press in hard copy and is already available via ebook. And because it's my 50th birthday and I couldn't decide where to start, I'm going to start at the beginning. And then I may read a couple of little passages from other parts of the book. So, thank you all. Can you show people
I can.
the people?
Oh, Susan's like, I'm not a videographer.
Yes, she is.
This is going to my students. So these are the people that helped me grow up right here from 30 on. And new friends.
And Aunt Sarah.
And Aunt Sarah.
Who came all the way from Berea,
The Berea, Kentucky contingent and the Floyd people. I'm serious. These are the people I came to Floyd for. So
without further ado, the first time I got to spend time on the ground with Red Terry was also the first time I ever saw a rattlesnake. Coiled under the storage container in the orchard, it alerted as soon as we started messing with the door. Red was not alarmed. Startled, but curious, I snapped a few pictures, inching closer to where it rested in the shade of a piece of propped plywood to get a better view. "You're in striking distance, you know," Red said, after watching me for a moment. Living within striking distance of the Mountain Valley Pipeline means we're subject to the venom of the Petra colonizers who invaded this high plateau of the Blue Ridge. It's seeped into our water supply, literally and figuratively. We're hypervigilant. White trucks with out-of-state license plates send our hearts racing. We see them behind us and slow down, or speed up, or follow them, or call someone else to follow them. Those trucks carry the workers who trenched across the fields next to the Blue Ridge Parkway, eventually tunneling under the road and changing the flow of the stream near the right-of-way, filling it with sediment and evidence. Several priceless wetlands were dug up, contaminated, and replaced with hard-packed soil that no longer facilitates flow. All of the trees that were protected by Red and Minor Terry for over a month were murdered the day after those two brave birds came down from their perches. I place myself within striking distance, never entirely sure whether to appeal to the seemingly non-existent hearts of those who could help us if they chose to, or to try to hurt them enough to take action, financially, politically, publicly. Sometimes it feels like I have a target painted on my back to contrast the messaging that I wear like a costume when really, water is life, or pipelines blow, or what we stand on is what we stand for, means far more to me than t-shirt philosophy. It's not window dressing. It's a window. Open it. So that's the first section of the book. And the next section comes quite a few sections later because it goes like this. Now that we've started, let's begin somewhere that approximates the beginning. Reconstruct the narrative. Stories change as we tell them, and they change as we place them into words, into meaning, into recount or catalyst or witness. On July 9th, 2014, my friend Bill Kaverick posted in our local Facebook Floyd group, "Hey Floyd, I think we've got a pipeline fight on our hands." On July 9th, 2001, my childhood best friend and husband, Corey, died in my arms as I gave him CPR. Our daughter Kyla called 911. She was only 3. and he left this earth with the ashes of grief scattered through the rest of our existence. Though I do not make this connection every time I'm asked where this began, it's generally present in my mind and heart. The particular emptiness of acute loss and traumatic grief felt on that particular day is a ripe void where causes can certainly rush in to paint my life with purpose beyond the day-to-day elements of survival. I am very, very good at surviving. The future created by our addiction to fossil fuels and the greed, control, and destruction we've wrought is one we will have to survive. This creates a certain skepticism about the necessity of hope. The MVP was still in the investment phase when Bill alerted Floyd County to the situation. There were a lot of plausible explanations to my immediate, visceral no when I read these words, but ultimately I can only say that I knew from that moment that I couldn't allow this to happen. I knew that the answer was no, and I knew that I would do whatever I could do to stop this fracking monstrosity from terrorizing our communities. So I fought back, and Floyd fought back. We organized swiftly, and within only a few weeks had 117 people at our first community meeting at the Floyd Country Store. By the middle of August, we had 14 active working groups. By early October, the route, which had already changed 3 times, moved outside of so-called Floyd County's borders. I was at the hub of a robust opposition that would swiftly become a massive resistance, agreeing to be part of the public face presented to media, industry, and various governments. I tried to cultivate the skill sets that would allow me to viably fight a project that was intrinsically linked to the corruption and collusion inherent in our current culture. It never really seemed optional to me. Working was breathing, and if I was awake, I was likely to be working in some way. These days, I sometimes think of it as weaving, since it seemed to consist mostly of following threads of connection and connecting the connections or compiling new information or insight as we utilized every resource we could collect and implement. Lots of horses midstream. We agreed early on that the goal was to stop the pipelines, given that the Atlantic Coast Pipeline had been proposed a few months before the MVP and threatened Central Virginia. Nelson County, the hub of the ACP resistance, became our sister county, and our early actions were based soundly within theirs. For a long time, I thought the ACP would be the more difficult project to fight, given the power and influence of Dominion and Duke, primary investors in the ACP. Many of us underestimated the fracking industry and the toxic tendrils that crept across every element of fossil fuel profit-driven destruction by petrocolonization. So that's the section number 2 that I'm going to share with you tonight. And I'm trying to decide whether to read another selection of prose or to close with a poem. Does anyone have preferences? Okay. Yeah, I think I have one in mind. I wanted to read the part about bell hooks, but I'll read that later. This is called I thought this was called the one that was called the Great Bent Mountain Massacre, but it's called Late Afternoon with Red Terry at Camp Wanga in early April. So since I came across it first, this is the one I'm going to read after I have one more sip. We thought that it might be time for the whippoorwills to begin their mating cries, but did not hear them, nor the owls, just a chorus of tiny frogs and the rush of Bottom Creek over Unakite and Quartz. We walked slowly, my feet in the water, I retrieved the warped board to allow you to cross dry, but you didn't want to. You didn't want to remember some things at all, nor did I, though I also wanted to remember everything, like when the whippoorwills began singing at twilight last year and which night the bear ambled through the woods and scared the cops. You showed me the ash trees eaten by the emerald ash borer and where the strong spring pops up to scatter over the field near the pipeline survey stakes. You showed me the repotted Christmas cactus, which for some reason is just now about to burst into bloom. You didn't want to remember some things at all, nor did I, though I also wanted to remember everything, like the day the children came to sing, and the county deputy who wanted to bring his banjo, telling me on the trail, so shy, that he loved our music, and he asked permission, but his sergeant said no. You showed me the limbs lost to ice storms and a couple of uprooted trees along the easement splintered by wind and the wetland delineation obliterated by the pipeline's weathered signs. You showed me the land, which is your heart, and though I wanted to drop to my knees and grip the dirt, which sometimes brings me solace, there's nothing like solace here, even if I reach into my chest and offer all that I have if I could, which would still not ever fix this. It would only get blood and muscle under my fingernails and not actually be useful for you. I want to be useful for you. I want to be useful. You didn't want to remember some things at all, nor did I, but I also wanted to remember everything, all that wakes us up with fear gripping our chests like occlusion, and the stuttering murmur of bats flying in and out of the crumbling chimney, snappers thick with mud leaving leathery eggs buried in the butchery. In a week or so, we reckon, depending on snow, the whippoorwills will begin to sing again, if there's a place for them still, between the wreckage of the murdered birches and the dropped body of your scarlet oak. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Sky.
Wow.